There is a country where the forest never ends, where lakes appear without names, where rivers flow for thousands of kilometers without meeting a road, where winter lasts half the year and the northern lights fill the sky. Canada, the second largest country on Earth. 10 million square kilometers, most of it empty, most of it wild. 3 oceans touch its shores, the Pacific in the west, cold and deep. The Atlantic in the east, rough and grey. The Arctic in the north, frozen for most of the year. Between them, the land stretches farther than the eye can follow, farther than the mind can hold. Mountains rise in the west, the Rockies. Peaks covered in snow even in summer. Glaciers that have been here for thousands of years. Lakes so blue they look unreal. The prairies spread across the center, flat and open, grassland reaching to the horizon in every direction. Sky so big it feels like another country. Forests cover the north, boreal forest, spruce and pine and birch, millions of square kilometers of trees, the largest intact forest left on Earth. Rivers cut through everything. The Mackenzie, the Yukon, the St. Lawrence, they drain a land so vast that water takes months to reach the sea. Lakes hold more fresh water than anywhere else. The Great Lakes in the south, Great Bear Lake and Great Slave Lake in the north. Thousands of smaller lakes with no names at all. The north rises into tundra, treeless, frozen, permafrost beneath the surface. Polar bears walk the ice. Caribou cross in herds that darken the land. Wildlife fills every corner. Grizzlies in the mountains. Moose in the wetlands. Wolves in the forest. Whales along both coasts. Eagles circling above cold rivers. Canada is not one landscape, it is many. Mountains and plains, forest and tundra, coastline and ice, but everywhere the same feeling. Space, silence, wilderness that has not been touched. This is Canada. The Rocky Mountains run like a wall through Western Canada. Thousands of kilometers of stone and ice, peaks rising over 3,000 meters. Some have names, most do not. They stand in rows, one behind another, fading into the distance until the sky swallows them. This is the spine of the continent, the Great Divide, a line drawn by geology millions of years ago. Banff sits at the heart of it, Canada's oldest national park, established in 1885. The mountains here are icons, photographed millions of times. But photographs do not capture the scale, the silence, the cold air that fills the lungs. Jasper lies to the north. Larger, wilder, fewer visitors, the same peaks, the same glaciers, but quieter. Roads wind through valleys that feel untouched. Trails lead into wilderness that stretches for hundreds of kilometers without a single building. Glaciers cling to the high slopes, rivers of ice moving so slowly the eye cannot see. They have been here for 10,000 years. Longer, they carved these valleys, scooped out the lakes, shaped the land into what it is today. The Columbia icefield sits between Banff and Jasper. 300 square kilometers of ice, up to 300 meters deep. It feeds rivers that flow to 3 different oceans, a frozen reservoir that has been melting and refreezing for ages. The glaciers are shrinking now, every year a little smaller. Rocks that were covered in ice a century ago now sit exposed. The landscape is changing, slowly but visibly. The lakes are impossible colors, turquoise, emerald, blue that looks painted. The color comes from glacier flour. rock ground to powder by the ice. The powder floats in the water and catches the light. It scatters the blue wavelengths. The result is color that does not seem real. Lake Louise sits beneath Victoria Glacier, a lake so famous it draws millions of visitors, but in the early morning, before the crowds arrive, it is silent. The water is still. The mountains reflect perfectly. Time stops. Moraine Lake is smaller. Surrounded by 10 peaks, the blue is deeper here, almost glowing. It sits in a valley carved by ice, fed by ice, colored by ice. Peyto Lake curves like a wolf's head when seen from above, bright turquoise against dark green forest. The lookout point offers one of the most photographed views in Canada. Forests fill the valleys below the peaks. Lodgepole pine, Engelmann spruce, subalpine fir. They grow thick on the lower slopes, dense and dark. The air smells of pine needles and cold water. The tree line marks a border. Below it, green. Above it, rock and ice. The trees cannot survive the altitude, the wind, the cold, so they stop. A sharp line drawn across every mountain. Rivers run through the valleys, milky with glacial sediment. They move fast over rocks, slow through meadows. The Bow River, the Athabasca, the North Saskatchewan, each one carrying meltwater toward distant oceans. Waterfalls drop from the cliffs, snowmelt pouring over ancient stone. Some are famous: Athabasca Falls, Sunwapta Falls, Bow Falls. Others have no names. They appear after rain or heavy melt and disappear when the water slows. The sound of water is everywhere. Rushing, dripping, falling. The mountains are never dry. Even in winter, water moves beneath the ice. Elk graze in the meadows. They move through the grass in the early morning and late evening. Large animals, calm, watching but rarely running. In autumn, the males gather harems. They call across the valleys, a high whistling sound that echoes off the stone. Winter lasts long here. Snow falls in October and stays until May. The lakes freeze. The waterfalls turn to ice. The roads close. Only the most determined travelers come. But those who do find something, the summer crowds never see. Silence, stillness, white covering everything. The Rockies do not change. Not in a human lifetime. The glaciers move, the rivers cut deeper, but the mountains remain, stone and ice, watching over the land as they have for millions of years. There is a place where water falls with such force that the ground shakes. Niagara Falls, the border between Canada and the United States. But borders mean nothing here. The water does not care about lines on maps. It simply falls and falls and falls. 6 million cubic feet of water pour over the edge every minute. During peak flow, even more. The volume is almost impossible to understand. Water from 4 of the 5 Great Lakes funnels through this single point. Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, all of it moving toward Lake Ontario, all of it passing over this cliff of ancient rock. The falls are not one waterfall, but 3. The American Falls on the United States side. The Bridal Veil Falls, smaller, separated by a tiny island. And the Horseshoe Falls on the Canadian side. The largest, the most powerful. Curved like its name, most of the water goes here. The Horseshoe Falls drop 57 meters. Not the tallest waterfall in the world, not even close. But the volume makes up for the height. The width stretches over 600 meters. A wall of white water curving through the mist. The sound never stops. A low roar that fills the air. You hear it before you see the falls. You feel it in your chest. It is not loud like thunder. It is constant like wind. a sound that becomes part of everything. Mist rises from the base, clouds of spray lifting into the air and drifting with the wind. On sunny days, rainbows appear in the mist, sometimes 2 or 3 at once, arcs of color hanging over the chaos of white water. The mist soaks everything nearby: rocks, railings, visitors. The air itself feels wet. In winter, the spray freezes. Trees near the falls turn white with ice. Railings become sculptures. The mist becomes snow before it lands. The river above the falls looks calm, green and smooth, moving steadily but without drama. Then the rapids begin. The water accelerates, it churns and tumbles, white foam appears, and then the edge. The water simply disappears over the cliff, gone in an instant. Below the falls, the river continues through a narrow gorge. The water that was falling is now moving forward, fast and angry. Whirlpools spin near the banks. The current is deadly here. Nothing survives a fall, and nothing survives the gorge without help. The falls are old, 12,000 years old, formed when the glaciers retreated and the Great Lakes drained toward the sea. But they are not permanent. The water erodes the rock. The falls move backward, 1 meter every year, once they were 11 kilometers downstream. Someday they will reach Lake Erie and drain it. But not for thousands of years. Birds fly through the mist, gulls riding the updrafts. They circle above the falls, white against the white spray. Some dive into the chaos and emerge unharmed. The falls are dangerous for humans. For birds, they are home. At night, lights illuminate the water, colors projected onto the falling curtain. Blue, green, red. The falls glow in the darkness, a different kind of beauty, artificial but still powerful. Winter transforms the scene, ice forms along the edges. The flow continues in the center, but the banks freeze solid. Ice bridges used to form at the base. People walked on them a century ago. Now it is forbidden. But the ice still comes, white and blue and green, a frozen frame around the endless motion. The falls do not care about visitors, about cameras, about history. The water simply falls. It had been falling for 12,000 years. It will fall for thousands more. The roar continues, the mist rises, the river moves on. Niagara, where water becomes thunder. North of the cities, north of the farms, north of the highways, the land opens up, the Yukon and Northwest Territories, Canada's northern wilderness, a region so vast it could swallow most countries whole. Over 1 million square kilometers, population smaller than a single city block in Toronto. The boreal forest covers the south, spruce and pine and birch stretching to the horizon. No roads cutting through, no towns breaking the green, just trees, millions of them, standing in silence. The forest is thick, dark in places where the canopy blocks the sun. The floor is soft with moss and fallen needles. Mushrooms grow on rotting logs. Lichen covers every surface. The air smells of damp earth and resin. Rivers cut through the wilderness. The Yukon River runs almost 2,000 kilometers from British Columbia to Alaska. Wide and slow in places, fast and narrow in others. It has been a highway for thousands of years. The only way through a land with no roads. The Mackenzie River flows north from Great Slave Lake to the Arctic Ocean, the longest river in Canada. It drains an area the size of Western Europe. In winter, it freezes. In spring, it floods. The cycle never changes. Smaller rivers feed the big ones. Streams pour off the mountains. Creeks wind through the forest. Water is everywhere. It pools in bogs and marshes. It fills lakes that have no names on any map. The forests thin as the land moves north. Trees grow shorter, sparser. The ground becomes soggy with permafrost just below the surface. Then the trees stop altogether. The tundra begins. Open land stretching to the sky. No trees, no shelter. Just moss and lichen and low shrubs pressed flat by the wind. In summer, the tundra blooms, briefly. Wildflowers push through the thin soil, purple and yellow and white. Then they are gone. The Nahanni River cuts through the southwest, one of the wildest rivers in North America. It drops through 4 massive canyons. Virginia Falls plunges 90 meters, twice the height of Niagara. But almost no one sees it. The land is too remote, too difficult to reach. Mountains rise in the west, the St. Elias Range, the Mackenzie Mountains, the Ogilvie Range, peaks covered in snow year-round. Glaciers filling the high valleys. Some of these mountains have never been climbed, never been named. They simply exist. Kluane National Park sits in the southwest Yukon, home to the largest ice fields outside the poles. Mount Logan rises here, the highest peak in Canada, 5,959 meters. Massive, remote, surrounded by ice on every side. The northern lights appear here more than almost anywhere else on Earth. In winter, the sky comes alive, green curtains of light rippling across the darkness. Sometimes purple, sometimes red. They move like water, like silk. Silent and slow, the lights are caused by solar particles hitting the atmosphere. But science does not capture what it feels like to stand alone in the frozen dark and watch the sky burn green above you. Moose wade through the northern lakes, the largest deer in the world. They stand in water up to their chests, eating plants from the bottom. Slow and heavy and unbothered. Caribou cross the tundra in herds, thousands of animals moving together. Their hooves click as they walk. The sound carries across the open land. They follow the same routes their ancestors followed for 10,000 years. Wolves follow the caribou, patient, tireless, watching for the weak and the young. A pack can travel 50 kilometers in a day without rest. Black bears and grizzlies roam the forest edges. They fish in the rivers. They dig for roots. They eat berries until their jaws are stained purple. In autumn, they grow fat. In winter, they disappear into dens and sleep until spring. The north is not empty. It just feels that way. Life is everywhere. In the rivers, in the forest, on the tundra, under the ice. But the scale makes everything small. The land is too big, too quiet, too old. The Yukon and Northwest Territories, Canada's forgotten wilderness, a place that does not need to be remembered. It simply continues. The Atlantic Ocean meets Canada with force. Waves built across 3,000 kilometers of open water hit the eastern shore. They crash against granite cliffs. They wash over rocky beaches. They carve the coastline one storm at a time. Nova Scotia and Newfoundland sit at the edge, the farthest east you can go in Canada. Provinces shaped by water and wind and fog. Nova Scotia means New Scotland. The land looks the part. Green hills rolling to the sea, rocky coves tucked between headlands, harbors where fishing boats rest on low tide. The coastline twists and turns for over 7,000 kilometers. Bays and inlets and peninsulas folding into each other. The Bay of Fundy lies between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. It holds the highest tides on Earth. The difference between high and low tide can reach 16 meters, 50 feet of water rising and falling twice a day. Every day, The ocean pours into the bay and then drains out again, billions of tons of water moving in and out. At low tide, the sea floor appears, rocks covered in seaweed, tide pools filled with small creatures, mud flats stretching for hundreds of meters. Then the water returns. Fast. You can watch it rise. Within hours, the sea floor is gone. The cliffs that stood above the water are now half submerged. The tides have carved the rock into strange shapes. Fog rolls in along the coast. It comes without warning, thick and grey and wet. It swallows lighthouses. It hides the shoreline. Ships have always feared this coast. Hundreds have been lost here over the centuries. The fog comes, and the world disappears. Cape Breton Island sits at the northern tip of Nova Scotia. The Cabot Trail wanes along its coast. Mountains drop to the sea. The highlands rise in the center. Boreal forest covers the plateaus. Moose graze in the meadows above the cliffs. Bald eagles circle over the coast. They nest in tall trees near the water. They hunt fish in the bays and rivers. Cape Breton has one of the densest eagle populations in eastern North America. Newfoundland lies further out in the Atlantic, an island apart from the mainland. Connected to Canada by ferry and by flight, but it feels separate, older, rougher, a place where the land meets the open ocean with nothing in between. The coastline is raw, cliffs of dark rock rising from the sea, waves pounding against stone that is over 1 billion years old. Some of the oldest rock on Earth sits here, the ancient bones of the continent exposed by time and weather. Gros Morne National Park sits on the western coast, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The tablelands rise above the park, flat-topped mountains of orange and brown rock. This is mantle rock, stone from deep inside the earth pushed to the surface by tectonic forces hundreds of millions of years ago. One of the few places on the planet where you can walk on the Earth's interior. Icebergs drift past Newfoundland in spring. They break from glaciers in Greenland and float south on the Labrador Current. Some are massive, hundreds of feet tall, blue and white. They move slowly through the cold water, shrinking as they go. By the time they reach Newfoundland, they are dying, but they are still enormous. Iceberg Alley runs along the northeast coast. From April to June, the bergs pass by, sometimes close to shore, sometimes dozens visible at once. They look like floating cathedrals, silent, ancient. Ice formed from snow that fell 10,000 years ago. Whales follow the same current. Humpbacks, fins, minkies. They come for the cold, nutrient-rich water. They feed on caplin and krill near the surface. From shore, their spouts are visible, white puffs against the grey sea. Puffins nest on the rocky islands, thousands of them. Small birds with bright orange beaks. They dive for fish and carry them back to their burrows. They look clumsy on land but are fast and agile in the water. Seals rest on the rocks, harp seals. Grey seals. They haul out of the cold water to warm themselves. Pups are born on the ice in early spring. White fur against white ice. The east coast is not gentle. The weather is harsh. Wind and rain and fog. Winters are long and cold. The sea is unforgiving. But there is beauty in the roughness, in the fog lifting to reveal a cliff, in the light breaking through clouds over the ocean, in the silence between waves. Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, where the land holds on against the sea. The Pacific coast of Canada is a different world. Dense, green, wet. mountains rising straight from the ocean, forests growing so thick that sunlight barely reaches the ground, rain falling for weeks without stopping. British Columbia, Canada's western edge, where the continent meets the sea. The coastline is carved into 1,000 pieces. Fjords cut deep into the mountains. Narrow channels wind between islands. Inlets reach inland for dozens of kilometers. From above, the coast looks shattered. Land and water tangled together. The Great Bear Rainforest stretches along the central coast, one of the largest temperate rainforests left on Earth. 6.5 million hectares. Ancient trees, western red cedar, Sitka spruce, some over 1,000 years old, trunks so wide that 5 people cannot reach around them. The forest floor is deep, layers of moss and fern and fallen wood. Nurse logs lie where they fell decades ago, new trees growing from their decay. Everything feeds everything. Nothing is wasted. Rain drives this ecosystem 3 to 4 meters a year in some areas. The air is always damp. Moisture drips from every surface. Fog settles in the valleys and hangs between the trees. The forest drinks constantly. Rivers pour out of the mountains and into the sea. They run fast and cold, glacial melt from above, rainwater from the slopes. They carry sediment and nutrients to the coast. Salmon return to these rivers every year, millions of them. Sockeye, chinook, coho, pink, chum. They fight upstream against the current. They leap over falls. They push through rapids. Their bodies change color as they travel, silver becoming red. They are heading home, back to the exact stream where they were born, to spawn and die. The salmon feed everything. Bears line the riverbanks waiting. Eagles perch in the trees above. Wolves hunt the shallows. When the fish die, their bodies wash onto the banks. They rot into the soil. The forest absorbs them. Trees near salmon streams grow faster. The ocean feeds the forest through the fish. The Kermode bear lives here. A black bear with white fur, not albino, a genetic variation found only in this rainforest. The spirit bear, sacred to the local First Nations. Perhaps fewer than 400 exist. They fish the same rivers as their black-furred relatives, ghost shapes against the dark forest. The ocean along the coast is cold and rich. Nutrients rise from the deep. Plankton bloom in the surface waters. Fish gather, and the hunters follow. Orcas patrol these waters. Resident pods that stay year-round, hunting salmon. Transient pods that pass through, hunting seals and sea lions. Their dorsal fins cut the surface, black and white against grey water. They travel in family groups. They communicate with calls unique to each pod, sounds that have been passed down for generations. Humpback whales feed here in summer. They dive deep and blow curtains of bubbles to trap fish. Then they lunge upward through the trapped school, mouths open, water streaming through baleen. A feeding technique perfected over millions of years. Grey whales migrate along the coast, from Mexico to Alaska and back, the longest migration of any mammal. They pass close to shore, close enough to see from the beaches of Vancouver Island. Sea otters float in the kelp beds, on their backs, cracking shellfish on stones resting on their chests. They wrap themselves in kelp to keep from drifting while they sleep. Once hunted to near extinction, now slowly returning. Sea lions bark from rocky haulouts, stellar sea lions. The largest species, males weigh over a ton. They are loud and territorial. Their colonies can be heard from far away. The mountains behind the coast rise sharply. The coast mountains. glaciers filling the high valleys, snow on the peaks year-round, waterfalls dropping from cliffs into the fjords below. The landscape is vertical, everything goes up or down. Vancouver Island shelters the coast from the open Pacific, the largest island on the west coast of North America. Its western shore takes the full force of the ocean. Waves built across the entire Pacific crash against the rocks. Long Beach stretches between headlands. Surfers ride the cold swells. Storm watchers come in winter to see waves that reach 20 meters. The east side of the island is calmer, protected waters, quieter bays, drier forests, a different world from the wild west coast. British Columbia holds more biodiversity than any other province in Canada. More species of trees, more species of mammals, more species of birds. The combination of ocean, mountain, and rainforest creates conditions found nowhere else in the country. The west coast is not gentle. It rains constantly. The terrain is steep and difficult. The ocean is cold and powerful, but the life here is extraordinary. Above the water and below, in the forest and along the shore, British Columbia, where the mountains meet the sea and everything in between, is wild. Above the tree line, above the roads, above the last traces of the South, the Arctic begins, Canada's far north. A place most Canadians will never see, Nunavut, the northern reaches of the Northwest Territories, the Arctic archipelago, islands scattered across a frozen sea. This is the largest and emptiest region of the country. Over 3 million square kilometers, population smaller than a small town. The land is flat, open, treeless. The tundra stretches in every direction, moss and lichen and low shrubs pressed against the ground. Nothing grows tall. The wind will not allow it. The cold will not allow it. The permafrost beneath holds everything in place. The permafrost goes deep, hundreds of meters in some places. Ground that has been frozen for thousands of years. In summer, only the top layer melts, a thin skin of mud and water. Plants grow in this shallow space, their roots spread wide but never deep. There is nowhere to go. Winter here is absolute. The sun disappears in November. In the high Arctic, it does not return until February. Months of darkness. Temperatures drop to -40, -50. Wind makes it worse. The wind chill can push the feeling to -70. Snow covers everything. The land and the sea become one. White meeting white at the horizon. No landmarks, no contrast, just flat and cold and dark. The sea freezes, Hudson Bay, the Beaufort Sea, the channels between the Arctic islands. Ice forms in autumn and grows thick through winter. It connects the islands. It covers the water. It becomes a landscape of its own. This is where the polar bear lives, the largest land predator on Earth. Males can weigh over 700 kilograms. They are built for this place. Thick fur, dense fat beneath the skin. Wide paws that grip the ice. Black skin beneath the white fur, absorbing the warmth of the sun. Polar bears hunt on the sea ice. They wait at breathing holes where seals come up for air. They lie flat on the ice, motionless, patient. When a seal surfaces, the bear strikes. One blow, fast and powerful. Ringed seals are the main prey. Small and fat and full of the calories a bear needs to survive. A single seal can sustain a bear for days. In good years, the hunting is easy. In bad years, when the ice forms late or melts early, the bears go hungry. Churchill, Manitoba sits on the western shore of Hudson Bay. Every autumn, polar bears gather here. They wait for the bay to freeze so they can walk out onto the ice and hunt. Dozens of bears wander the tundra near town, waiting, watching the water. When the ice finally forms, the bears leave. They walk out onto the frozen bay and disappear into the white. The Arctic is not only bears. Arctic foxes hunt across the tundra. Small and quick, white in winter, brown or grey in summer, they eat lemmings mostly, digging through the snow, pouncing on sounds they hear beneath the surface. Musk oxen stand in small herds, shaggy coats hanging to the ground. They have been here since the Ice Ages. When wolves approach, they form a circle. Horns facing out, calves protected in the center. Caribou migrate through in vast numbers. The porcupine caribou herd, the Bathurst herd, hundreds of thousands of animals moving across the tundra. Following routes they have followed for 10,000 years. Snowy owls watch from the ground. They do not perch in trees. There are no trees. They sit on rocks or small rises, yellow eyes scanning for movement. When prey appears, they fly low and fast, silent wings over the snow. In summer, the Arctic transforms. The sun returns. It does not set for weeks, 24 hours of light. The snow melts, water pools everywhere. The tundra turns green and brown. Wildflowers appear, purple saxifrage, Arctic poppies, yellow and white against the dark soil. Birds arrive by the millions, snow geese. Arctic terns. Plovers. Sandpipers. They fly from as far as Antarctica to breed here, the longest migrations on Earth. They nest on the ground. They raise their chicks in the endless daylight. Then they leave before the freeze returns. Beluga whales gather in the river estuaries. White whales in grey water, hundreds of them. They come to give birth in the warmer, shallow water. Their calls fill the air, clicks and whistles. They are among the most vocal whales in the world. Walruses haul out on rocky shores, huge bodies, thick skin, long tusks. They feed on clams and shellfish on the sea floor. They use their tusks to pull themselves onto the ice. Colonies can number in the hundreds. The noise and the smell carry far. The Arctic is changing. The ice is thinning, forming later, melting earlier. The bears have less time to hunt. The permafrost is softening. The tundra is warming. But fur. In the south, the land holds water on a scale that seems impossible. 5 lakes. Superior. Michigan. Huron. Erie. Ontario. Together they hold 20% of the world's surface fresh water, more water than most countries will ever see. They are not lakes in the way most people imagine lakes. They are inland seas, shorelines that stretch beyond the horizon, waves that build and crash like ocean surf, depths that swallow light. Lake Superior is the largest freshwater lake by surface area on Earth. 82,000 square kilometers of cold, dark water, deep enough to hold all the other Great Lakes combined. The water is so cold that it never gives up its dead. Ships that sank a century ago rest on the bottom, preserved in the darkness. Superior's north shore is Canadian, rocky, wild. The Canadian Shield meets the water, ancient granite worn smooth by waves, pine trees growing from cracks in the stone. The shoreline looks more like an ocean coast than a lakeside. Storms build on Superior without warning. The lake is large enough to create its own weather. Waves can reach 8 meters. Ships have been lost here. The Edmund Fitzgerald sank in 1975 in a November storm. 29 men gone. The lake keeps its secrets. Lake Huron wraps around Ontario's western edge. Georgian Bay cuts into the land. 30,000 islands scatter across the water. Some are just bare rock. Others hold forests. The water is clear in the north, blue and cold. The Bruce Peninsula reaches into Lake Huron. Limestone cliffs drop straight to the water. The Niagara Escarpment runs through here, the same rock formation that creates Niagara Falls. Here it forms white cliffs over turquoise water, caves and grottos carved by the waves. Lake Erie is the shallowest, the warmest, the most alive. Fish thrive here: walleye, perch, bass. The shallow water warms quickly in summer. Algae bloom green across the surface. The lake breathes with life. Point Pelly reaches into Lake Erie from the Canadian side, the southernmost point of mainland Canada. A thin strip of land, marshes and forest. Birds funnel through during migration. Warblers, hawks, monarchs. Millions of creatures pass through this narrow point twice a year. Lake Ontario receives all the water from the other lakes. It pours over Niagara Falls and settles here. Smaller than Superior, but still vast. The water continues east through the St. Lawrence River toward the Atlantic. The shores of the Great Lakes are varied. Sandy beaches stretch for kilometers in some places. Dunes rise behind them, tall grass blowing in the wind. In other places, rock meets water with no beach at all. Cliffs and boulders and crashing waves. Wetlands line the quieter bays, marshes filled with cattails and reeds. Herons stand in the shallows. Turtles sun on logs. Frogs call from the edges. These wetlands filter the water. They shelter fish. They feed the birds. The lakes freeze in winter. Not completely. Not every year. But ice forms along the shores. It builds outward. In cold years, most of Erie freezes over. Superior holds ice into April. The ice is beautiful, blue and white, cracked and layered. It groans as it shifts. In spring, the ice breaks. It piles on the shores. Chunks the size of cars pushed by the wind. Then it melts. The water opens. The cycle begins again. The Great Lakes are not wilderness in the way the Arctic is wilderness. Cities sit on their shores. Highways run alongside them. Industry has marked them. But the water does not care. It stretches to the horizon. It builds waves that feel like ocean. It freezes and thaws and moves with its own rhythm. The lakes are old, 12,000 years old, carved by glaciers that retreated and left behind basins that filled with meltwater. They are patient. They are vast. They are quiet in a way that only very large things can be quiet. The Great Lakes, freshwater seas in the heart of a continent. Between the mountains and the lakes, the land flattens. It flattens so completely that the eye has nothing to hold on to. No hills, no ridges, no trees in some places, just land meeting sky in a straight line that runs from one edge of the world to the other. The Prairies, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, 3 provinces that share one thing: space. This is grassland. It stretches for hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. The soil beneath is dark and rich, built over thousands of years by grass growing and dying and growing again. The wind never stops. It moves across the open land with nothing to slow it down. It bends the grass in waves. It pushes clouds across the sky. The sky here is the biggest thing. Sunrises stretch across the entire horizon. Sunsets glow for hours. Storm clouds build in towers that reach higher than mountains. Thunderstorms cross the prairies in summer. Dark walls of cloud trailing curtains of rain. Lightning flashes. Thunder rolls across the flat land. The storms move fast. 30 minutes of chaos. Then blue sky. Rivers cross the flatland. The South Saskatchewan, the North Saskatchewan, the Red River. They move slowly through the grass, winding in wide curves. In spring, they flood. The land is too flat to drain. The Badlands rise in southern Alberta. Hoodoos stand like sentinels, pillars of soft rock carved by wind and rain into strange shapes. The rock is layered, red and brown and grey. Dinosaur bones lie in these formations. 70 million years ago, this was swampland. Now their bones are pulled from the dry rock. Pronghorn antelope run across the southern grasslands. The fastest land animal in North America. Nearly 90 kilometers per hour. Bison once covered these plains, millions of them. They were nearly wiped out. Now small herds exist in protected areas. Dark shapes moving through the grass the way they did for thousands of years. Hawks circle above, red-tailed hawks. Ferruginous hawks, they ride the thermals. They watch for movement below. Coyotes trot through the grass at dusk. Their howl at sunset is the sound of the prairies. In autumn, the grass turns gold. Geese fly south in long formations. Their calls echo over the empty fields. The prairies, the wide open, the big sky, the quiet heart of Canada. Then the cold comes. It arrives from the north. Slowly at first, a frost in September, a dusting of snow in October. Then it settles in. By November, winter owns the country. Canada and winter are the same thing in much of the world's imagination. And for good reason. This is one of the coldest countries on Earth. Winter lasts 5 months in the south, 8 months in the north. In some places it never fully leaves. The snow begins and does not stop. It covers the prairies in white. It bends the branches in the boreal forest. It buries the tundra until the land and the sky are the same color. Rivers freeze, lakes freeze, even parts of the ocean freeze. The ice on Hudson Bay grows thick enough for polar bears to walk to the horizon. The cold is dry and sharp. In Winnipeg, temperatures drop to -30. In Yellowknife, -40. In the Arctic, -50 and beyond. At those temperatures, exposed skin freezes in minutes. Breath turns to ice crystals in the air. The days grow short. In December, the sun rises late and sets early. In the far north, it does not rise at all. Weeks of darkness, only the stars and the northern lights. The aurora borealis appears across the winter sky. Green curtains ripple in from horizon to horizon, sometimes purple, sometimes red. They move in silence, shifting and fading and returning. The sky is alive while the land sleeps. The forests go quiet. Most birds have flown south. The ones that remain are tough. Ravens croak in the cold. Chickadees flit between branches. Blue jays call from the pines. Woodpeckers tap at frozen bark. Bears sleep in their dens, curled in darkness. Heartbeat slow, breathing shallow. Cubs born in January, tiny and blind, nursing while the mother barely wakes. Moose stand in the deep snow. They browse on twigs and bark. Their long legs push through drifts that would trap smaller animals. They move slowly, conserving energy. Every calorie matters. Wolves hunt through the snow. Their paws spread wide on the surface. They travel in single file. The lead wolf breaks the trail. The others follow. They cover vast distances. Patient and tireless, caribou paw through the snow for lichen. Their broad hooves work like shovels. The herds keep moving. Standing still means death. Foxes hunt beneath the surface. They listen for voles and mice moving in tunnels under the snow. Then they leap, diving headfirst into the white, a technique perfected over thousands of generations. The ice on the lakes groans and cracks. The sound carries for kilometers. Pressure builds as the ice expands. It shifts and settles. Booms echo across frozen water. Icicles hang from cliffs and waterfalls. Some waterfalls freeze entirely, walls of blue and white ice where water once poured. They will melt in spring, but for now they stand like sculptures. The snow changes the world. It softens every edge. It muffles every sound. The forest, the mountains, the prairies, everything is white and quiet. Winter is not death. It is pause. The land is resting. The roots hold beneath the frozen ground. The seeds wait in the soil. The bears dream in their dens. Spring will come. It always does. The ice will crack. The water will flow. The birds will return. But for now, Canada sleeps. Canada, a name that stretches from ocean to ocean to ocean. Pacific, Atlantic, Arctic, 3 coastlines, 1 country, 10 million square kilometers. The second largest nation on Earth, and most of it untouched, most of it unnamed, most of it unseen by human eyes. The land begins at the Atlantic, rocky shores beaten by waves, fog settling over cold water, cliffs standing against the sea. The coastline twists and turns for thousands of kilometers, bays and inlets and islands scattered like broken pieces of the continent. Moving west, the land rises into hills, green and soft in summer, white and silent in winter. Forests cover everything, maple and birch and oak in the east. The leaves turn red and gold in autumn, entire hillsides burning with color before the cold strips them bare. The Great Lakes appear in the south, freshwater seas stretching to the horizon. Water so vast, it looks like ocean. Waves build and crash on sandy shores. In winter, ice forms along the edges, blue and white, groaning as it shifts. North of the lakes, the boreal forest begins. It does not stop for thousands of kilometers. Spruce, pine, birch, fir, an ocean of trees. From the air it looks endless, because it nearly is. Rivers wind through the green, lakes appear and disappear. No roads, no towns, just forest. The prairies open in the center, the trees fall away, the land flattens, sky takes over, more sky than land. Sunsets that last for hours. Storms that build like mountains in the air, lightning flashing across the flat horizon. Then silence, then stars. The grassland rolls on, golden in autumn, green in spring, white in winter. The wind moves through it constantly, bending the grass in waves that look like water. The mountains rise in the west, the Rockies, stone and ice reaching above the clouds, glaciers filling the valleys. lakes of impossible blue sitting at the feet of peaks that have no names. Waterfalls pouring down from cliffs that no one has climbed. The mountains are old, but they are still rising, still being shaped by ice and water and wind, still changing in ways too slow for the human eye. Beyond the peaks, the land drops to the Pacific. Rainforest covers the coast, green and thick and dripping with moisture. Ancient trees standing in fog, fjords cutting deep into the mountains. The ocean pushing against the land, cold water, rich water, water that feeds everything. The coastline shatters into islands and channels, thousands of them, most without names, most without visitors. The water moves between them, tides rise and fall, fog rolls in and out. North of everything, the Arctic waits. The trees disappear, the land opens into tundra, flat and treeless, stretching to the frozen ocean. Snow covers the ground for 8 months of the year. The sun disappears in winter and does not return for weeks. The ice extends across the sea, white meeting white, no line between land and water, no horizon, just cold and silence stretching in every direction. The northern lights appear in the winter sky, green curtains of light moving slowly across the darkness, sometimes purple, sometimes red. They shift and fold and fade, then return, silent, ancient, a light show that has been playing for millions of years, with no audience but the stars. The seasons hold Canada together. Spring comes slowly. It starts in the south and moves north over weeks. Ice breaks on the rivers. Water flows again. The first green appears on the branches. Snow melts into mud. The air softens. Birds return, one species at a time, then dozens, then millions. The land wakes up. Summer is brief in much of the country, a few months of warmth and light. The forests are full, the grasslands are green. The mountains shed their snow on the lower slopes. Rivers run high with meltwater. The days are long. In the north, the sun does not set. Life moves fast. Everything grows. Everything feeds. Everything breeds. Autumn arrives without announcement. A cool morning, a yellow leaf. Then the change spreads. The forests turn, red maple, golden birch, orange aspen. The color moves across the land like a slow fire. The air turns crisp. The light turns gold. Geese cross the sky heading south. The land begins to quiet. Then winter. Snow falls. Rivers freeze. Lakes turn to ice. The forests go silent. The prairies disappear under white. The mountains become walls of ice and stone. The Arctic extends its reach southward. The cold settles in, deep and patient. It does not hurry. It does not leave until it is ready. But beneath the snow, the land holds. The roots wait in frozen soil. The seeds sit in darkness. The rivers flow under the ice. Life does not end. It pauses. Canada has been doing this for 12,000 years. Since the glaciers retreated, since the water filled the lakes, since the forests grew and the grass covered the plains. The cycle does not break. Spring follows winter, summer follows spring. The mountains do not move, the forests do not end, the water does not stop. This is a country built by ice and time, shaped by water and wind, held together by distance and silence. It does not ask for attention. It does not need visitors. It does not care about names on maps or lines between provinces. The land was here before anyone came. It will be here long after everyone is gone. Wide, quiet, unchanged. Canada.